All right, good. Diana's on the live stream. There we go. This is going. If you're participating in the live stream, if you get the crown, you get 50 XP. So, does anybody know what the YouTube XP does?
I don't remember.
Can I exchange it for cash? Probably not, right?
50 XP.
Yeah. In the live stream, if you do the most commenting, you get XP, experience points, which are probably not redeemable for cash, if I had to guess. Although, who knows? There might be a market for that now. There we go. Okay, everybody. Things are due on Tuesday nights. As I previously stated, my grading is generous. It is much more important that you stay with the class rather than fall behind. And so even if you're working on something, it's not quite done, and it's not, or you had some sort of like mission critical problem, you still, I would encourage you, if the choice is between not turning it in and turning in something that isn't totally what you wanted, or you had some sort of fundamental issue, turn something in. Remember, this is your best opportunity to ask about. In fact, whatever the problem was, right? What we're going to do right now, right? We're going to play back everybody's video. We talk about what they did, get feedback, right? This is the time during the week that we've carved out to look at your stuff, right? And for the class, for everybody else, like, of course, it's better to have it go well than not have it go well. But it's really useful for everybody. Like, someone says, like, well, I didn't quite get this done because I had this problem. And then we can be like, okay, well, this problem is this. Because if you're having that issue, chances are someone else had that issue. Like, we had a mission critical issue in 200 that sort of kept everybody's thing from working because of software updates, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we were able to solve that really quick because someone posted on Discord, someone else figured it out, blah, blah, blah. And same kind of thing here. And so, again, this isn't my first rodeo doing this. The people who don't turn stuff in, especially here at the beginning, you know, let's hashtag real talk, they don't usually finish the class, right? Because it just snowballs in terms of not getting things done. So, yeah, show what you have, okay? This is your time to, I'm keeping it on this weekly schedule. We turn things in on Canvas, but really this is our weekly check-in, right? Like me speaking to you, you speaking to us about what it is that you're actually doing. What have you learned here, right? So it's in the form of whatever I've asked you to do that week, but turn something in. Everybody with me here? Okay. So other class, this is my policy and my educational philosophy. There may be other teachers who would say don't do that because they're just doing it differently, and that's fine. But this is what we're doing here because everybody's kind of on their own path, right? We're all taking this 3D modeling class, but the stuff we want to make is all different. Doing artwork is different than learning math to some extent. So everybody understand this? Have I made myself seem sufficiently friendly that you feel comfortable saying when something's wrong, right? Like, I hope I've communicated that I'm not the kind of person who's going to jump on you, right? I may get salty if it's something I've explained like multiple times before, because that's what we're doing in class, right? So, your responsibility is to, watch the class and know what's happening here. But please, like, this is the opportunity to do this, see what's happening with your things. And then, yeah, we're going to play back everybody's videos here in a second. And another issue here in OBS. Okay, so I've made the OBS intro video a bunch of times, so I don't quite remember what's in there and what's not. In settings, under advanced, here we go. File name formatting. And so this is something to know here. The overarching term to write down in your notes is a token. Okay, what is a token? A token is this kind of thing. It's a, for those of you familiar with any sort of programming, it's essentially a variable. The variable is linked to, in this case, the date and time. And so the default tokens here in OBS when you make a new video is year, month, date, hour, minute, second, right? That's what it automatically names the file that you record in OBS, which is, so you don't have to type in the date. These variables mean that when you stop recording, OBS looks at the system clock, figures out what time it is, and then names the file according to what time it is, right? You can change this stuff. What I want you to do is this. You can put regular text in front of these tokens so that I'm not receiving 10 files that are just random timestamps, presumably Tuesday night, right? So that I can see who's doing what. And if you put this here in this file name formatting, every time you make a new video in OBS, it'll be named with your name, right? This is the value proposition of computers, right? If you find yourself doing the same thing on a computer over and over and over again, my advice to you is that's not a great use of your time, right? That's what the computer's really good at, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again. It can do it much, much, much better and much faster than you can, right? Once you've established what that is. And so this is another instance, right? Rather than going in and renaming your movie every time you record it, if you put it in here, now it's automatically named correctly each time, right? So this is super useful. And a bunch of programs, yeah, Blender, does Blender do this by default? I can't remember if this is built in by default. There's some different add-ons that do a similar sort of thing, where we get this timestamp. You can have this automatically generated timestamp in the name of the render or of the file or whatever there, right? The other thing that this does is, I've transitioned to doing this a lot in the last few years, is having the timestamp for the actual stuff in the name of the file, right? Windows does have that created on and edited on, but yeah, I don't know whether it's just the way I do things, but those dates, especially if you're copying stuff from one section to another of your hard drive, they're not very reliable for me. Whereas if you write the date in the name of the file, that is pretty much etched in stone, as much as a computer is at this point, so that it's there in the name of the file, which is for me, much, much more helpful. And this also avoids that issue that we discussed very briefly, that you can't have two names with the same file in the same folder, right? And so, but by putting the timestamp in the name of the file, especially a timestamp that includes seconds, the only way you would get identical file names here is if you made two files within the same second, right? Which is not likely in this instance. Does this make sense for everybody? Okay, so the big takeaway here is put your name here so that next week when we do this, am I still broadcasting? There we go. Right, we don't have a bunch of things like this and this, right? We've at least got and that, right? Okay. It's fine for this week. Did I talk about this in that OBS video? I did? About putting it in there? Okay. All right. Well, regardless, I'm saying it again now, right? But the idea here that you have these, the token, the word token is just the idea of this automatically accessed variable of some kind, right? In most instances, it includes some version of the date, but it could include other stuff, right? Like it could be name of the file the name of the folder that the file is saved in, or it could be some other stuff that you access, or whatever, right? It's a variable. You could say that this is equal to whatever it is that you want to make it equal to. And so, so yeah, keep that in mind. All right. Awesome. So here we go. Let's see how everybody's doing. Hold on. Let me make sure this is here and this is on. Okay. And yeah, a lot of you said you're getting your cameras in order. Yeah, so I appreciate that. Allow me to once again just reiterate my expression to you that if you can, I encourage you to appear on camera.
All right, let's see here. This is my video for the Blender projects I did. This is my first.
Okay, this is MJ's? Okay, yeah. So we just went in there about the just having your name on the video file. Right. Yeah.
First one, I tried to basically make Kaufmo from the Amazing Digital Circus. Some of the tools I really liked using was just all the gizmos, because it did help me quite a bit on making this guy. The tools I did not like specifically for this one was the light and the camera, and this was before I realized I could just grab the camera if it's slightly off. So I was sitting here for like 20 minutes struggling on this guy. And then the lighting, I was trying to show like these little glitches I put on him, but I mostly just made this guy out of mesh. And for my next one, if it will let me open it. Okay, we're just gonna save that. I did a little chessboard. Hold on, sorry, this is in object mode, there it is. I did a little chessboard for the order. I really like the Amazing Digital Circus, so I did a chessboard as a way to kind of represent Kinger. For this, I really liked Alt-D as like a shortcut, so I could just do this and then get this done pretty quick. I actually liked the camera and lighting for this. It was pretty simple to use. The tools I did not like were trying to align these so they looked aligned and none were sticking out, as well as the coloring, because I was struggling a little bit back here for all of that. But yeah, those are my...
Okay, great. All right. We, like I said, we just had the one class last week, and so we're really, what I want you to do is just go in there and get your feet wet. The main thing here is that, you came in here and moved some stuff around and you made this, but I need you as a future aspiring artist to understand the word abstract, right? So it's what you did is fine, but I mean, do you understand that this is not an abstract thing, right? You pick something out in the world and you try to make something that represents that. That is representational art, right? And so just as someone who wants to, in any artistic context, be a professional, there needs to be some sort of like shared vocabulary that everybody has. And the idea of abstract versus representational art is like a foundational concept that everyone needs to understand, for sure. I'm not saying like you need to make abstract art. You need to make whatever art it is that you feel called to make. You need to understand the words abstract versus representational. Yes?
Were both supposed to be abstract or just chaos?
Yeah, both were supposed to be abstract. Yeah, right? So, because that's part of the overarching thing to learn here is that, abstraction can be organized or can be chaotic, right? So, like, both of those are like that. So just keep that in mind there. And then the struggling with the lighting here, can you be more specific? Like what you put in the light and then you didn't see it affect, or?
When I was trying to do the render, what would happen is like the lighting would be off and then it wouldn't show some of it, and then the entire thing would just be one big shadow. So I was struggling a bit trying to figure out how to place the lighting.
Okay, so based on what we're seeing here, can someone help MJ out? What could she do to have a better control of writing? Yes, Mark.
You could see the lighting through the render view.
Yeah, so
Take more resources.
exactly. Yeah, you're in the other one, the checkerboard. You're in this view up here, which is the render view, which is going to show you what we see when you render. Whereas this one, you stayed in solid view, which by default is not going to show you the lights. And so then you're stuck in the situation you were in, where you're not in a WYSIWYG paradigm. Did I use that word last Monday? Yeah. But right, in this case, we want to work in WYSIWYG while we can here when stuff's not too heavy, because it's better. We want to see what we're doing, right? Without that, then you're literally in the dark. You know, like you're doing something, and we're using computers, but stuck in this process that's much more akin to like film photography, where we like shoot something, then we, days or weeks or months later, develop it in a dark room, expose ourselves to a bunch of like probably toxic chemicals, and then eventually find an image or see the image, right? And so there's like the feedback loop there of like, okay, like I took the picture, weeks or months later, I get the feedback of what that picture looked like, and then I go out and take pictures again, and I can, change what I'm doing based on that. That's a long feedback loop, right? Whereas here, we have the potential of making our feedback loop instantaneous, which is obviously better for learning things faster. Cool. Okay. And then MJ, I'll ask you first. So, like, yeah, you did it. The Shift D was the best way to, duplicate these things. But what would have helped you line them up?
Not gonna lie, I was looking at my notes and I couldn't find it.
So what I would write down in my notes is holding down Control is going to give you the snap, or just turning on the snap tool up here. That's going to snap them to the grid, so that when you duplicate them, then it makes it very easy to make the grid perfect, right? So both of those things. Yeah, because this situations like this, because we use computers and they're digital things, there's a level of innate precision that they have, is that a lot of student stuff kind of falls into this category, where when I'm looking at it, it's not quite lined up. Like let's just use alignment as what we're talking about here. But I'm unsure whether that was intentional or not intentional. If it's just kind of off, it's like, well, maybe they're trying to get it lined up and it didn't just happen, versus it being an intentional artistic statement, right? And so for people starting off, if you're going to make something disorganized, make it really disorganized, okay? To make it visually obvious that that's what you're doing. There's more of a discussion to have here in terms of like, what you can get away with as a beginning artist versus what you can get away with as a quote unquote genius artist. In terms of, how people are gonna, the amount of benefit of the doubt that people are gonna give you looking at your images, right? But at this point, I would assume not much, starting off. Okay, awesome. Well done. Okay, like I said, turn it in. Even if there's issues, make sure you have something that we can talk about. Great. Okay, let's keep going. We're gonna go kind of quick today because we got a bunch of people up here, and then, yeah, you sent me a message, right? You're working on the camera. Do you have to put a camera on the thing or no? Okay. All right.
This is Marcus Tinney, and this is the first of my Blender abstract order and chaos, starting with Mike.
Okay, you got music in there?
Yes.
Okay, where did the music come from?
I mean, I can't really hear the music right now, so I can't remember exactly.
Okay, so that's great, that's fine, right? The problem, it's not, I don't have a problem with the music, okay? The issue here is that we're broadcasting, and so unless it's the specifically music that YouTube has deemed not going to trigger someone else's, copyright free, then we're in a problem.
It should be fine because it's like a type of video game music that my videos it doesn't get copyrighted. So
Okay,
think it should
okay.
be fine, but I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, like this is like I think this is BS, right? Because we're in this educational context, and we should be protected by that part of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, as I understand it. But I am not a lawyer. In order to keep doing the class like this, I need to make sure that YouTube doesn't take down my account. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I should put that in the thing in the video next semester, as far as like, don't do that so we won't end up in this situation for the most part. Okay, so great. Just FYI.
There should be a way to like mute that part of the stream if that becomes a problem, but I think it should be fine.
Okay.
But I'll keep that in mind for later. and I'll
Yeah,
keep
yeah, I totally appreciate it. Got really great production value here. You got yourself cut out. What are you using to cut yourself out? Do you have a screen behind you,
I
or?
do have a green screen.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, the chroma key looked good.
Order.
About music.
Uh-huh.
A couple years ago, when I did some of the animations, I used a total one-time Scholastic license.
Mhm.
That's gone.
That's gone.
Totally wiped out because there's so much streaming.
Mhm.
People are grabbing stuff and a lot of the AI generated music. It's just too complicated, so they wiped that out.
Yeah,
That doesn't exist anymore.
yeah. It.
Just to mention.
Yeah. Like this is personally extremely frustrating, So, yeah, like the whole landscape here is very dystopian. Because this also makes it hard for me to play back examples for you guys in class, because it goes out over the stream, triggers all the stuff, right? This is such an issue that, like, one of my long-term things I'm working on here is like, how can we do this without YouTube, right? But YouTube provides a lot of stuff here. Like the video hosting quality is like as good as it gets, and then also there's this automatic transcription that's happening, which is also really super useful. So, is it possible to construct a system outside of that where I also wouldn't have this complete? Because it's not like it's all happening automatically, right? Like it's not like there's anyone at YouTube reviewing these things, and even to get to that point, to ask someone to review it, so that they would be like, "Oh no, you're fine." Like that's impossible. So.
This is my first one where I used a cube array that I did in such a way to make cubes make a cube out of a cube. I put a torus around it to make it look like it was a planet. I messed around with the lighting and some like displacement features to make it look like these were made out of clay. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. Here's the final results. It was really challenging to figure out exactly what.
So did you do that in post, or?
I did that.
Okay. So not Mark. What does it mean to do it in post? Afterwards, right? Like you record the video and then he's editing it afterwards. I'm not saying you need to edit your videos afterwards. A lot of students really, they have experience of doing that in a variety of other contexts, and so they like doing that, and it's great. But just, in the context of this class, since we're doing computer graphics here, trying to be just talking about the transparency of like, how was this done? Like, was this done in camera or like live, or did we do it later? Like, all of that is important in terms of like learning about how to do this stuff.
I wanted you to make this order because I knew exactly what to do with chaos, and that would be this right here. I made Zooble from the Amazing Digital Circus because they are a mismatch of just random shapes to make a character, and I did Zooble's head flying in, crashing into whatever this is, using more arrays and displacement things. And it makes a really nice spiral. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And it looks really good from the render view, especially when it's rendered, but it looks amazing in Cycles render. I'm happy with how it turned out. And the challenging part about this was getting the array to curve in such a way that it makes it so the smoke trail drifts in a way that makes the most sense, like it's that Zooble's crashing through this like structure. But that's all I have for now. I hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.
Great. Those both look really good. Really good. Yeah. So here, this, the second one there where you know, like, is that abstract or representational? The character itself is like, it is this character, it is this thing that you're referencing in the world. So we're sort of like, you know, arguably outside the world of pure gesture there, but our character itself has like this abstract, construction to it. And so, yeah, that's part of the reading that I gave you guys with the Scott McCloud is the triangle there, right? Is that all of these things exist on continuums. And, you know, there'll be people who write books who argue that this is the line between abstraction and representational art, but that's all, you know, opinions about this. These things exist on these sort of continuums, and especially in terms of like, you know, this idea, can we completely divorce ourselves from the idea of things being representational, right? Even in pure, quote unquote, purely abstract art, people are going to see it and then say like, oh, it looks like this, or it reminds me of this, right? Like if we just watch the clouds, this is part of a, you know, foundational cultural story in terms of like seeing figures in the clouds, right? What could be this abstract shapes that then, you know, our perceptual apparatus, you know, turns into representational stuff of some kind in our continuous search to find meaning in things. So yeah, great. These both look really, really good. Really, really good. That's fun.
Oh, and I made sure to, like, when I showed the render, like, in post, I was gonna put it on the right side, but I put it more towards the middle, so there's room for your webcam on the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on top, right? So that you're going to see, yeah, yeah.
So I had to re-render it to put it all back in the middle, so there's room for you, so you're not covering it up.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. And you're staying on the left-hand side, you stayed out of my corner, so I appreciate that.
Hi, this is my blank.
Hold on. Okay, now the talk about gain management. Okay, I mentioned this in the video, I'm pretty sure as well. So when I'm talking here, if I'm not getting really worked up about YouTube, I'm trying to stay in the yellow zone, right? And I have the mic here, and the number one thing to do to fix your gain problem is to move the mic closer to your mouth, okay? If you have a mic that you can move, physical placement of the microphone is by far the biggest thing you can do to change the way you sound, okay? All of the other sliders and stuff, you know, like that's secondary. First thing is put this here, right? Like last semester, I had multiple students with headphones that have the microphone that comes around, and then the microphone, they would spin up, so it would be on top of their head, either because they didn't know it was a microphone or I'm not sure. But they sounded, you know, like there was a lot of room reverberation in the recording. The level was very low, right? Because that fix is very easy. Just flip the microphone down closer to your mouth, right? And so when you're recording in OBS, ideally, you also want to be in this zone here, the yellow zone. If you're recording and it's way down here, we're going to get stuck in this cycle where every time I play back a recording, I got to adjust the volume because someone was either way too loud or way too soft, right? And then all of this just becomes gain management. So if you're recording, you put the microphone close and it's still way down here. The other thing you can do is come into here. Well, the first thing you can do is turn up the gain on the microphone, okay? So, but not every microphone is going to have a gain knob on it or volume or amplitude knob. In which case, right, so 1, move microphone. 2, turn up knob. 3, if you're using a headset with a microphone on it, chances are you had to install some sort of driver. And so going into the driver settings, right? So whatever brand it is, if you look for that, it has some sort of control panel that when you installed it so you could use it, there's something in there, driver settings, gain. And then 4, like none of those things are available. You can increase the gain in OBS, okay? So how do I make sure I'm loud enough? This is your strategic plan for increasing loudness. So over here, desktop audio filters, And yeah, gain. And yeah, I have the student one turned up for this exact reason. I'm going to put it back at 0. What does dB stand for? Decibels, right? Volume level. However, 0 dB is no increase, okay? And you want to make sure, how much do you need to turn it up? Just enough, okay? Because you can turn it up too much, right? And then we get digital distortion, which is not like cool Jimi Hendrix distortion. It's just pretty grating in this context. So you don't want to be going up here into the red. Like if that's the case, all of those things I just told you to do to turn it down or turn it up, you could turn it down. But yeah, increasing the gain there, if you add, you have to add that filter. I don't think I said that, which is plus gain. Then you can increase it until your signal, right? Mine's up here. Yours will be up there too. For me here at school, you guys are on this one and I'm on the top one. But for you at home, you'll be here. So it should look like that, like what I'm doing. Okay. So I've said that. I'll probably have to say it again, but keep that in mind.
Your assignment. I have my chaos array here, visible by clicking it. You see the modifier still there. And then I have my organized one. This one has for the properties, right? And this one I just left white and let the lights just do their thing. I honestly found the array modifier to be both my favorite thing about the entire assignment and also found it a bit of a challenge. I struggled to get it to do what I wanted it to do. Like this, with this one I didn't really have to worry about like how it is that it turned out, as it was just meant to be disorganized, I guess. But on this one, I was trying to be very careful about how everything turned out on it. Yeah, get out of here.
So Brianna, what was, are you talking about like the chain links here? Like they would go through each other, or what were you trying to do that was difficult?
I wanted like the positions for all of the chains.
Uh-huh.
As I didn't want them to be like just exactly lined up.
Oh, okay.
And then when I tried using the randomize, because I wanted them to not be like just a specific like pattern basically, it would have one of the chains go way too far, then I had to make all of the chains longer in order for it to fit the canvas size.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So this is, as we go up that procedural chain of, atomic elements, I mentioned this before, then objects, then modifier, right? Like the randomized thing can be powerful. And so in this case, for something like this, I mean, you're sort of creating it as you're going. But this isn't a million chains, right? It's like 10. And so if my advice here would just be the strategy, knowing that you want this very specific arrangement, perhaps just duplicating one array, that way you can position them exactly afterwards, is like the shorter way to go about it there. But yeah, that's I'm glad you pointed that out. That is precisely the issue here, is right. We want to be able to leverage the computer to create these more complex, interesting arrangements of things, but we also want them to be art directable, right? Like if we want to specifically control something, there's always friction there between leveraging the computer to do something at scale and having specific control over the details. But yeah, both of those look really great, and definitely understood the assignment there in terms of the abstraction and everything. And I like what you ended up doing with the lighting. This ended up being very moody but interesting lighting.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Is there a way to put a constraint on the randomize? Because I had that problem where I would randomize something and the pieces would going way too far out, and that was causing a lot of clipping issues. So can you constrain the randomize?
I think you can just sort of define the max range. Let me see. Yeah, it's just going to be the, right? So between 0 and whatever this number is. So if you don't want it to go further than that, you just get a max, right? That's what essentially all of these would be.
Randomize.
Hmm.
They go back. Okay, yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And the other question is, how did you did you make? You had both in one file, and you turned off one crate collection. Does the render? Is the render view have go with the collection? Go with each scene collection? Because they're one of them, the chain is a beautiful dog with a couple of colors, but then the other one has a totally different look. So does the render stay with the collection?
I mean, I think you did them both in the same blend file.
Both in the same,
Yeah.
file, like not really seeing until like I was going to submit it that it says to have like 2 different files for
Yeah.
it. So the light does like, it's slightly moved out for, the chain so that I could have the light on it. But it's the like exact same light, exact same colors for the chain and the chaos one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thing you're having here, Blender can have multiple files open at the same time. But how do you force that? You have to, if I click on it?
Yeah, I just don't like the switching around on the screen. If we have to do this in 2 minutes, I don't want to waste even 20 seconds looking for the other file, closing one and opening. So
Yeah, yeah. So having them both open at the same time. Yeah, that way you can
They're not
just.
2 different files. It's one file, but it's different. You're turning on and off.
That's what she did. Yeah, yeah. She did both in the same file, but having multiple files open is the long-term solution to your problem, right? So you can just click.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
figure that one out.
yeah, yeah. I think if you go over to File, Open,
Mm-hmm.
I believe the default behavior here is to close the one you have and open the new one. But if you just leave this one open and then you open the other one, then it opens it up in a second
Okay.
window. I believe. Can anyone confirm?
You can
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
as long as your computer is like able to handle.
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
data, then yeah.
yeah. Here at the beginning, like you can have many files open, right? You see, when I'm working, like
Yeah.
I'll have 10, stupidly have like 10 files open at the same time. Yeah, but yeah, there's limited computer resources, so if they're all set to render view, then
So you're gonna open from the Finder.
yeah, I think that's the easiest way to sort of default it. But if you go to File, Open, then it closes this one and opens the other one.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, and so then like you can just come down here and there'll be, when you mouse over it, there'll be a list and you can just click to the next one, or you can do the Alt Tab thing, right? Mine's happening over on the other window, but in Windows, Alt Tab lets you quickly switch between the things, between the different open windows. Okay, awesome, very, very nice, Brianna.
Hi.
Here we go.
So my two abstractions that I made, it took a while, but I figured it out. But so the two ones I did were
Okay, if you're gonna have your dog in your video, it's gonna be very distracting. He looks very cute. What's your dog's name?
Charlie.
Charlie.
When I started recording, he just got there, so
Yeah.
I couldn't really.
No, I love dogs. Charlie looks very similar to my dog, Pierogi. Pierogi's like more Chihuahua, so a little bit smaller, but the same colors. He seems unimpressed by your 3D rendering at this
Oh,
point.
he's asleep.
Yeah.
Wakes up slightly in the video.
Yeah. My dog is also similarly unimpressed with all of my computer graphics.
Hi. So my two abstractions that I made, it took a while, but I figured it out. But so the two ones I did were, oops, one second, is this one for the chaos. I mostly didn't know what I was gonna do for this one. I just went with the flow. Sorry. Um, I had some examples with like eyes and stuff, and I kind of made them looking like ghosts. Each one has their own color. If we go from here, this is what it looks like. And I think you're well. But while while doing everything, I had three lights. One is just for a little bit lighting. The other two were to help with put more colors in. Like the top one is red and the bottom one is blue. So there's that. What I did love to use was actually just putting them all together.
Yeah, this looks really great. Really, really great. Like nice use of the lighting. We'll get to a lot of that stuff later on, but like you've used this before?
No, this is, so my other class, we were learning with, it was digital animation, we were using blenders. So I kind of learned a little bit from that class.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit, especially at the beginning when we've got a ton of videos, right? Like just we're close on time.
We're doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like my time constraints on the videos are just it's not that I don't want to hear what everyone has to say. It's just that we have to listen to everybody. So, like, if you have to go a little bit over or a little bit under, that's fine, right? But, it's a little bit longer here.
Came to just making it. But the tool that I actually quite loved using was the X and Y's and Z's, because I was able to do my spacing and checking if some of it would go past, but as long as it looked flat, I actually quite liked it. Like, look at that.
Yeah, that's really great. Again, going back to the idea of being able to precisely position things because we're working with two-dimensional stuff, right? And then, I mean, are you working on a desktop or a laptop?
I'm using it on a laptop.
Okay, is that one of the school ones?
Yes.
Okay, does it have a numpad or no?
It has, no.
It does not. Okay, yeah. So then, yeah, your strategy of using this is probably like the easiest thing, right? Because like the 1, 3, 7, 9 will just do that same thing, but with the buttons. But yeah, using that on screen when you've got the school laptop, that's really great. Remind you your name again? Celeste, right. Okay, yeah. Looks really great, Celeste. Very, 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 very nice. Very nice. These are both, definitely abstract. I mean, obviously this one, you're somewhere on that spectrum between abstract and representational here. And that, I mean, I thought these looked like people there, but again, that's just me ascribing, like meaning to it, which people will do with things that look abstract anyway. Awesome. Very, very nice.
Hello everyone,
Here's
I'm
Isaac.
Isaac, and this is my submission for the week 1 introduction to Blender. Starting off with, we have our chaos scene. I was hoping to go for a very spacey, like spacecraft debris kind of vibes. The satellites that you see in the sky in space photos. And the tools that I think I liked using was a lot of the modifiers. They just streamlined the process instead of trying to manually create things on your own. The specific modifiers that I used were the arrays, I used mirrors, and I used wireframes to try and get like these weird little icosphere wire things. And the tools that I found challenging, at least for both scenes, by the way, and to move on, this is also my order scene. The tools that I found challenging were the rendering settings. Well, yeah, it's not necessarily a tool, but the rendering settings. There's a difference between the cycles and or using cycles versus using EVs, and using cycles takes up a lot more processing power. I tried to see if I could.
No, Isaac just asked in chat if there's an echo. I mean, it sounds like it doesn't sound like an echo. It just sounds maybe something's happening in your microphone that you're using. So also over here, you see how I'm coming in on one channel? If you look at yours and your microphone is coming in to more than one channel, that is also not good. Don't do that. Yes.
The echo could also be like the video playing back loud enough to get to your mic.
Not yet. It could be, but it's not. I have a cough button here that mutes the incoming microphone when I play back there. Otherwise, it does sound phasey on the broadcast. But yeah, I cut that off here when you guys are talking on the video. So yeah, because we don't get that back. That doesn't go out again there. But yeah, just something. Okay. But yeah, the big thing here is if you're seeing your microphone happening twice, turn down one of them so that that's not the case.
Render my works with cycles.
Yeah. So yeah, there's this many Blender tutorials will talk about cycles looking better than Eevee, and students, again, because it's just one drop-down menu, they're like, okay, well, just click that drop-down menu. And my message to you right now is don't click that drop-down menu, okay? Just leave it in the default Eevee for now. Certainly for everything we're doing for the next 3 months, you can make Eevee look just as good as Cycles, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about rendering a little bit more today. So just keep that in mind, because that's one of those drop-down menus. It's just one click for you, but it could just literally make your render time greater by orders of magnitude, right? Not twice as long, like 100 times as long, right? In which point you're like, what? There's a lot to say about this that I will say later on as to why that's happening, how not to do it. There's a whole conversation. It's like kind of technical, pretty boring. And right now we can just avoid that and continue to make stuff by just leaving it in Eevee.
Using my GPU, and I came up with some problems trying to get my chaos file to work specifically, more so in trying to add anything else just caused the thing to crash, which I'm just going to be assuming is like an obstacle or problem with my GPU. Regarding any questions that I have, I don't think I have any. I'm understanding these concepts pretty smoothly, so woo.
Great, super. Yeah, and then Isaac, says like, I just wanted a prettier render. If you don't do anything to the settings, you just switch from Eevee to Cycles, like the prettiness increase without doing a bunch of other stuff is like, unless you've done some very specific things, like 0.5%, whereas the render time increase is like 100x. So that's not like a great strategic trade-off for everything. Okay, so even though lots of certain people on YouTube tutorials talk about that, I would encourage you to just leave it in Eevee and try to do some other things to make it look good, because it can look great. Okay, great. Okay, let's keep going. Well done, Isaac. I like both of those a lot. I like putting the image in the back there for that one. And yeah, we had some symmetry even for the chaotic one, which I thought worked pretty well. So great.
Anna, and this is the chaos blend that I made. I was just...
Is this you, Alejandra? Or, no, who is this? This is... Let me see. Which one is this? Chaos and Order. Okay, this is Diana. Okay.
Messing around with the arrays, so they're all like arrays. So I just like put the offset and everything super high. I didn't do it that much because I wanted them all to still be in the center of everything. And the rectangles, I just felt like I tried to just do the floating object, but then I felt like it looked too empty, so I added the rectangles, and then I had another shape. I had this like the icosphere. I don't know, but this is what it looks like rendered. I felt like it was too much of a mess with the icosphere, so I just did this. And then it looked too empty without the background, so I had to put color in, and the light is just there because I didn't color the blocks in, so I needed some color in there. Okay, this is the order one, and this is my second attempt because my first one I started off with a chain. It was like a chain, but it was kind of in a bracelet. It was like in a bracelet shape. It was in a circle, and it looked really weird. I didn't know what else to put on it, and it ended up just looking like a chaos one. It didn't look like order, so I just restarted, and the background is there because I tried to do it with just the colored background like the other one, but it just didn't like how it looked because when I put the background plain like this, I liked that there was the shadows there. And I mean, at first I didn't really like the shadows. I thought they would look weird because they had like these like sharp edges, but then I thought it looked way better with them than without them. So this is how it looks now. And the camera was being weird. Like, this isn't how the camera looks, so I don't know what that's about, but if you know, let me know. And wait, this is what it looked like rendered. This is where the camera's supposed to be. That's where I have it, but whenever I go to the camera mode, it's like super zoomed in. Those are my two blends.
Okay, great. Yeah, again, good understanding of the word abstraction. And yeah, like this is a cool, it's funny, we have multiple sort of chain projects here with all these things. And then, yeah, I personally also found the shadowing pattern on the background compelling, but this is another instance where, I'm glad to see people, in your case, Diana, you had shadows on what looked like some light in the first one, at least one of the lights, and then you have shadows on here, which is something I would write down in my notes. Unlike the real world, shadows are optional here, and by default they are off on the point lights. Or no, that was in Unity. They're on, but they are optional here. And so we can do things to have like the shadows not show up here. But in this case, I thought this works as a composition there. Cool. Those are both very nice. The only thing I would encourage you to be a little bit more conservative with is that, I can only see like 7 of the point lights you have here. And this is not how you want to start thinking about lighting your project, right? In general, I would think about brighter lights, not more lights. Again, the ease of duplication here can be problematic in that I can just Control D, Shift D all these lights, right? I can just Shift D. Shifting a bunch of meshes is in general not going to be as problematic as making like a gazillion lights. Okay, like each light requires more computation, especially when it comes to rendering. So for right now, like it worked out just fine. But not only is this not technically probably the best strategy, it also becomes less controllable later on, right? When you got like, well, there's 19 lights in this object. Like, well, just if your computer can handle it, like you managing all of those lights also becomes kind of like a bottleneck in the design of the scene. So there's that. And again, the real world here, like in photography class, I'll bet everyone $500 they do not do a studio setup that has 19 lights in it during the semester, right? Because someone's got to go into the closet and get all those lights out and set them all up. And then you got to plug them in, which is not like, then you're blowing the circuit. Then you're thinking about which plugs can I go in? Like this is what happens on movie sets, like constantly. And so, my point is don't use too many lights. Yes.
Before that, I an analogy to the music studio. How many mics on a drum set?
Right.
That with one overhead. But I was going to ask, so I don't know if you want to spend any more time at all on the concept of abstract, because we're all clearly identifying this on the previous couple file back as chain.
Mm-hmm.
I have the same issue,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and people are identifying it as buildings, dominoes, you know. So, but isn't that part of abstract? That I can see chain mail, and then someone might see a bunch of donuts,
Mm-hmm.
you know, golden donuts. You know, so that's just something I wanted to point out. Abstract.
Yeah, I mean, any abstract image, someone can, people can find representational meaning in it, right? But my point here is just, this is the first assignment of the semester. I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands that this continuum exists. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, I have it too.
Yeah. Like these. I mean, in Diana's case here, she's like, was it Diana who said, like, I wanted to make a bracelet, but then I ended up doing this for whatever reason. And so, yeah, this seems like like just more sort of raw pattern than, a picture of a bracelet would be. So.
You say clouds, the cloud reference. Is it clouds, or is it like the Immaculate Conception I see? Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, the observer is in the system. Like you can't, like raw, pure observerless abstraction is, it's not even a thing, right? So.
Hi, so these are my chaos and order things. I didn't really have time to make them because I had like work and other things, but I really liked using the colors, and the shapes were really fun to play with. It was really challenging to like start it basically because all the stuff we learned just I had to go through my notes again and stuff. What else? I do have questions too, as I think it just using the program more. It felt unnatural to me, but like I had to look it up and stuff, and I had fun like using like the toggle, the arrows, like the axes and stuff, and the colors. The colors were really fun, especially when you especially when you see the rendered view, and yeah.
Great, super. All right, so. Okay, go ahead.
Can you show us how to like save the file again? Because when I was trying to do it, I completely forgot, and then I tried to look through my notes when my notes are a mess.
Okay, so I mean, Control S. You have that one in your notes?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, Control S is going to save it regardless. I mean that.
You meant like the file, like how you saved it before.
And then
Yeah.
you go through that process to pick where you want to save at.
Is that what you mean? Like, where is it going?
Yeah,
Or.
like you were saying how when it saves by itself, it has the Blender 0.1 file or whatever.
Right. Okay. So that is all just the auto save. Okay. So that's it saving on its own in case you mess up, but you still want to manually save the file. Okay. So that's just Control S, and if you haven't saved it, then it'll prompt you to name it here and put it wherever you want. So Control S is what I would have in my notes there, and in any instance. But yeah, what I was telling you there, that more complicated scheme, is just here's the gist. You want to go to Preferences, Save and Load, and you want to make sure that this box is checked, okay, so that it is backing it up. In the unlikely and hopefully not going to happen event that your file gets corrupted, then that's when you do what I was doing there. You take out the number, and you don't have to do that every time just to bring the file back. That's only if your file has become corrupted and now there's a problem, right? It's your insurance policy. But you don't want to have to use, as someone who's had to use insurance to get their house repaired this summer, you don't want to use your insurance, right? Of course you have to have it, and it costs a lot, but you don't want to use it, right? And same thing here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah. So yeah, you want to include the files. That's good. Like you're just sort of getting you're new to all of this, so you're just sort of getting used to it there. It'll get better going over time. I mean, just from a time management strategy, like doing a little bit each day, definitely better than waiting till the end, right? So if you can, yeah, try and like close to daily practice. Like I would strongly encourage you to find 10 minutes a day versus 70 minutes on Tuesdays, right? So it's just not only it'll be way better in every respect. So okay, cool. That's coming along. Where's all my stuff? Okay, here we go. George.
Hello, everyone. This is Terrence McMillan.
Okay, and then remind me of your name again. Alondra. Okay, right. Alejandra and Alondra are sitting right next to each other. I'll get it.
For ABC 185, my Order and Chaos Blender artwork. I kind of probably used a lot more shapes than I needed to, but I wanted to do. I've made something like this before, and I wanted to try and remake it since my last time doing it, I guess. Sorry, I'm sick. You can probably tell based on my voice, but yeah, it's I'm trying to keep it together. So
you're doing good, George.
Yeah, this is my order piece. It's kind of like a diorama of a lighthouse on a mountainside. I think that the like lighting system Blender has is really kind of like incredible, and I wanted to exploit that as much as possible. And hillsides like that are just really interesting.
Yeah. So within my time of teaching this, like the last 11 years, the idea that we can move the lights around WYSIWYG style and see the shadows and the colors and everything, that wasn't on the table when I started teaching this, right? And so the amount of progress here, fueled a lot by the video game industry, is substantial and yeah, incredible.
To me, I like looking at real models people make of little dioramas like this, where they've got like a micro scale something. Yeah, I just made was a lot of use of the transform tool, scale tool, copy and paste. The trees are two main models, and one is just has another cone of leaves or whatever. And then the cylinders here containing the light source are a radial, like an array. Sorry, in Photoshop the array tool is like I think it's called a radial.
Yeah, and so the array tool here, one of the ways that you can organize things is in a circle, in a radial pattern, right? So like it's kind of a subtool of the array.
And so I went into the modifiers looking for it and couldn't find it, so I had to look it up. But yeah, these are radials, or an array, and I use those on my chaos ones too. But I think this looks a lot better than the last time I tried it, so I'm excited to kind of expand on it. And then
okay, but just coming back here, the where this falls, where this isn't what we asked for, George, is that it is like specifically representational, right? So going back and perhaps looking at the abstract, the case for abstraction again, and then also the Scott McCloud reading, right? The raw gesture, just what raw shape, what does that look like, right? Versus trying to make something that looks like a lighthouse. So think about that.
for my chaos one,
But technically well executed.
I made kind of a mandala. This is something that I did in the past for another class as well, but it was like a drawn mandala, and I think that again the lighting system in Blender is just so good, and so I wanted to kind of exploit that to make a shadow mandala.
Yeah, so George is doing something here putting the light source close to the object creates these really dramatic shadows. So when you're doing that intentionally and you're in control of it, that's a really great tool to have in your tool set, right? And George is doing that intentionally. I would say, well done, George. However, a lot of students do this unintentionally in that they put the lights just very, very close to objects, just sort of haphazardly, and it creates these kind of shadows haphazardly. So something to be aware of when you're creating here, right? Think about where the lights are, like just if you're just doing stuff in a room, most of the time the light is coming from above, fairly far above, right? And if you put the light, if you make a room and your only light source is like a light bulb that's sitting on the floor, that's going to look is going to look not typical, right? And if you're doing that intentionally, fine. If you're doing that haphazardly, maybe not great.
Yeah, and again, more use of the array tools with these cylinders and these points on the outside, and then just the scale and transform tool for these. What are they called? Toruses. That's right. And then the bottom is just a plain plate scaled upwards. So yeah, it all went pretty well. I think I accomplished what I was intending to. So
okay, good. Yeah, you're technically achieving what you need to achieve here, George, but just go back and review the term abstraction so that I know that you know what that means.
Hello class, my name is Alejandra, and today I'll be showing you my chaos and order scenes.
The other ones were really
first I'm
quiet.
Showing you is my order scene, and this was loosely inspired by a biblically accurate angel. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is kind of roughly what they look like. This is what I was inspired by.
Do you know where, I couldn't remember, where in the Bible they have that description?
I have no clue. It's just stuff I would see online. I was like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think it's in one of the Old Testament books, but I don't remember it.
Abstract, very abstract.
Yeah. There's the other frame of reference for this. Is that Noah's Ark movie that came out a while back with Russell Crowe as Noah. Isn't that an Darren Aronofsky movie? I think so. The angels are not typical angel shape in that one, and I think they're referencing a lot of that here. I'll play once we're done with everything here at the end. I'll play one of the sequences from that. The movie is fine, but
You talk about like the rock monsters, right?
the rock monsters, yeah, the rock monsters are the angels, I believe, in that version of the story. But then there's a particular segment in that movie where they recount, the beginning of Genesis, just sort of, let there be light, very beginning, first day, second day. But the animation on that sequence is really, really great, and I'll play that for you later.
So I was able to make this using mostly spheres, and I got all of these rings built out with the array tool. I basically put a bunch of balls lined up in a circle, and I flattened them out, and it gave me this look. Originally, I was just going to use like cylinders, or hollowed out cylinders to give this ring-ish look, but I didn't like how it looked, so I ended up going with this, and I like it because it gives it more dimension, or it makes it look like it moves a little. I don't know. And I personally think I can also use this to interpret chaos, because people say that biblically accurate angels are something that humans are not able to comprehend, and like looking at those images of like depictions of other people's stuff, were disturbing to look at. So that's why I think it could also fall under chaos. But anyways, we're gonna move on. Next one I'll be showing you is my actual chaos scene, which is inspired by my little sister. She just likes to have a mess of toys, and this is what this illustrates. I use the random function on the array tool to give these spheres like a bouncing ball look. And then I also used the edit mode to shape these building blocks. And the only thing I really struggled with this is color. I could not get the lighting to work for the life of me. Right now I don't have it set up where you can see the rendered version, but I struggled a lot getting that lighting to make it look really colorful and pastel. 'Cause that's kind of the look I wanted to go with, and I think I succeeded. So yeah.
Okay, so what about the lighting didn't work
It was
here?
just, like, not bright, and when I would, like, have the light just in the actual render, like, you can barely see anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I right-clicked it, and it said if I can, like, adjust, like, the power of the light so that I kept moving my cursor, and it just kept getting brighter, so I was like, okay, this works.
Okay.
If you click on the light bulb, there's be like a button off to the side near like where the modifier is at. Where you can adjust all the stuff like that.
Yeah. So when you have the light selected right here, right, and then we have to be in that tab, and then our primary thing is power. Okay, and so this will let you adjust it.
The exposure thing can make it basically be like as bright as like the sun.
Yeah, it's a multiplier for the other one. Yeah. Okay, great, good. I mean, the second one, kind of like the spherical stuff, definitely abstract, but looks like kind of like a playroom. But you clearly understand the concept there. Yours kind of played on the edges of those things. The angel thing looked really cool. I like it. Let's see, almost there. This is okay. Let me come back to that one. Here's Max.
All right, third time's the charm. There we go. So here's my Blender file.
So you recorded this 3 times?
Yeah, I actually have a question real quick. So I keep on doing it over again. I only have my one headset, which goes to my PlayStation. On my PlayStation, it sounds totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
On my laptop, something's weird about it. I tried doing a gain filter, but I saw that you added it to desktop audio. I added it to the input, audio input.
Yeah.
Is that the same?
I mean, no, they're not the same, but you want to add it to wherever your audio is coming in to OBS, and clearly yours is happening here, right? So yeah, like I'm managing me and you here, right? So my setup is slightly different than you just recording you, right? So yeah, you're going into audio input, and so that's where you'd want to put the gain. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really notice a big difference.
Okay. I mean, it's possible. It's in the wrong place or something. But if you max out the gain on the audio gain, it should see something happening.
I guess I didn't max it.
Okay.
Like 3/4, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just continue to talk while you're doing it and see if it you can move it up there.
But then I mean, as the video kind of goes on too, I don't know if it's like the actual microphone. It kind of just I don't know if it's like not exactly compatible. It kind of like cuts out and stuff. So,
Yeah. I mean it's a USB headset that you just plugged in.
phone jack.
Oh, the headphone jack. Okay. Okay. Well, then in that case, there's also the audio input for Windows,
Yeah, I was using that one too.
and you were able to adjust that slider. That went the whole way up.
It was
Okay.
only like 2 slides, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's input and output there, so there's 2 things. But I mean, this is reasonable. Usually, this is a huge problem when like people are just way down here the whole time. So it's okay for now.
Show you my order one first. This one was the one I did first. This one was a little easy. I kind of just stuck to like shape building. Mostly just use the array tool, regular shape building. Saw that this monkey was a primitive. So I added that as a shape. Tried doing like a glass thing. Like a transparent glass for this plane right here. Couldn't figure out, Googled it. I decided to skip it, had to delete it.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah, that's right. The glass is a whole thing, right? Like they were talking about light going through things. There's reflection and refraction there. I'll talk about all this stuff later. Like so, just as is. We'll put some other color on stuff today.
But yeah, then I got, a little light. Again, kind of just like a shape, really. Like a big build. Just because why not? And as far as my Chaos one goes, save that. Chaos one I definitely had more fun in. Here is kind of most of it. I would say that the main thing I used was the array, but then kind of a weird one that I experimented with was it this one? Yeah, this screw one. So, screw modifier. Kind of just took like the cube, twisted it up, maxed that out, made something crazy. But yeah, kind of reminds you of paper origami. I think that looks cool. I like this one more than the order one. But yeah, I think it came out pretty nice. Not too challenging.
Cool, good. I'm glad everyone got in there and is, using all the tools. That was the main purpose here, right? Not to make some sort of magnum opus that you will forever identify as the height of your artistic output. So when you start manipulating all of the planes and faces extremely, like they can look like paper there, and you can also sort of mentally think about them that way. But yeah, that works to a point. Cool. Max's.
I guess I just had a question real quick.
Yes.
So as far as the glass one goes, there's like the material glass, was it BSF? What is that? Why doesn't that work?
Yeah, that's a shader. There's just a lot to say here.
Okay,
Yeah. So like just stay tuned. Okay. Yeah. Like and we're talking about rendering specifics here. It's not just the material. Everything matters here. The environment, the lighting, the reflections, in order to make something actually look like that. So there's a bunch of stuff there. We'll get to it.
This is my
Fun.
chaos render here. And with this, I honestly had the most fun with the coloring. I kind of had
John, yours is a little bit low there. A little bit more gain would be great.
the chance to get more in detail with this one, with the colors, and I had a chance to get more in detail with this one in general, honestly. But I had the most fun with the colors and making this shape right here in the center. I've been thinking about this shape since we started using Blender, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The most challenging for this scene specifically was this is when I started to try to use the camera, and I went through a lot of hurdles until I figured out how I wanted it, which is like this. And I even had some help to reshape the framing of the camera. This is my order render model, I guess. I made this after our first day of class, actually, and all I did today was change the colors. I chose not to change anything that I made on it because I'm trying to really get a good track of progression for this course, because I have no experience or knowledge or anything for this. For this one, I had the most struggles with making an accurate amount of layers. I'm not really sure how I did this, but just for the sake of showing.
Yeah, that looks like more cubes than I'm seeing on the left there. Something has happened. I mean, I think they might be on top of each other, right? So this can happen, like you duplicate something and you don't move the duplicate, and then you just got two things right on top of each other. And you want to avoid that in general. If you have textures, it would be visually obvious, but here, it rendered quote unquote okay, but yeah, there's certainly something going on.
There's
yeah, okay, so even there with those cubes on the right, it's some version of that. I think you did some duplicates and you didn't move the duplicates. Yeah, Sean says, I think it came from too much Shift D. Yes, you indeed have overdosed on Shift D.
Multiple different versions of this just on top of one another. And I tried to clean it up and I don't know how. So
I mean, you could just select these and delete them over here. That would be a start. Yeah, that's what I'd probably start. start with that. You got a bunch of overlapping stuff there.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this project. Thank you.
Cool. Great. Great. Yeah, I mean, so this one, both abstractish, and ordered over here. You just got a ton of cubes, but you got through the process, which is what we're looking for here at the beginning. Great. Here's
Chaos
backpack.
versus order. The story behind the two files is that there is chaos within everything that is ordered. The accompanying written word is on Discord. So this is chaos. And I started out with two primitives, a cylinder and a cube up here somewhere, and then I subdivided, added a subdivision a few times, and I was just grabbing points and pulling at the faces and the points, the vertices, and just shoving them around and creating this thing, which I think that's very chaotic. But the idea had been, my intent was to take this and return it to order, but I was afraid that Control-Zing out of it would have lost all of the interim steps, so I didn't want to do it that way. So I started with a different file for order, and I applied chaos to it. So that is here, and I started out making an array, going across, and then manually having to stack them because I couldn't figure out how to offset it on the z-axis. And then I...
Okay, so did you figure that out later or no?
No.
Okay, so that's what the three...
It's not a clone. It's not a clone, so I just manually...
I mean, were you using the array modifier?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the offset is per axis, right? So if I say 0 here, and then I go to z, then that moves them up.
Because it all seemed to come down to the point of origin, which I kept putting in the middle, but then it would still go up this way, because so you have to zero out the other.
Yeah, this is, we're going to add this much to the x every time, this much to the y every time, and this much to the z every time.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took one of these units after I joined it, and then I added chaos to it. I did the same thing that I did in the first file. I grabbed points, vertices, points and polygons, and just rotated them and twisted them, and I arrived at that. My favorite event in 3D modeling is this kind of thing where I and the computer and the machine are working together to create something completely unexpected, because I'm never going to be printing this. I'm not going to be 3D printing this. It is all about art, so it doesn't matter if I have non-manifold surfaces or points, polygons that don't have 3 points, and so on. The favorite tools: apply origin and then G comma Y, or my troubling tool was apply origin and G comma Y and R, because this end.
I mean, just you're not pressing comma, right? You're just saying that.
I'm
Okay,
just
all right.
saying,
Just
I'm
you know,
not
like
it's like the
you know.
same tool that I write just gave me so much trouble
Yeah.
in the long run.
Okay.
Navigation panel. When you do that, then you still have to go over to this set origin menu, and all of these things did not help me make the array take off from
Okay, but we addressed that issue, right? Like, okay.
anything but it was just going this way, and that's not what I wanted to do. So the array is not a clone. I hope you can go over that in class, and could use a lot of help on setting the camera, and then, well, this is just a lot.
Okay, in setting the camera, the Control Alt. Did you use Control Alt 0?
I use 0. I just do 0.
Okay.
But I couldn't.
0 is different than Control Alt 0. Okay, so 0 is just look through the camera where it currently is. Everybody have this down in their notes, right? 0. Control Alt 0 is your camera placement tool. It's move around here to the new view, however you want this to look, and then I'm going to move the camera to here, to where I'm looking now, right? Because the viewport when does the viewport camera and the actual camera object, when are they aligned? If you press 0. Now I am looking in the viewport camera, the working camera, and the actual camera object are in the same, I'm looking through that camera object. If I start working and doing stuff, right, the viewport camera, which is not, it's kind of abstract because it's not an object over here, it's just how I'm viewing the thing, right? So now if I want to see this from this angle, Control Alt 0, boom. Now, as long as you have the defaults, you'll see this dark box, meaning that now the camera has been moved to, so now if I move around and do stuff and then I press 0, it's that view that I just moved it to there.
So I'm not supposed to be grabbing G the camera, and moving around. I'm using, when you do Control Alt 0, are you automatically in the POV of the camera?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So like,
Okay.
I'm only pressing Control Alt 0 when I'm lining up my shot.
I see.
Right? Like it's time for me to put on my cinematographer hat and I want to see this from over here. And so I'm like doing this and then Control Alt 0. Boom. That's how I want to render there. Okay. And then I go back into work mode doing, construction hat. And then I go back to cinematographer hat, which is probably like a beret of some kind. And then press 0 again. And, I'm looking through the camera.
But still though, now you've got to change the focal length.
We'll get to that stuff. Yeah. Like,
But
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm still not seeing it, what I saw with Control. I'm watching you, the Control Alt 0, and then pressing camera still is the same thing. But I'll start with it.
Yeah, they're two different commands, right? Just pressing 0 is look through all it does is move the viewport to the camera. Control Alt 0 moves the camera to the viewport. Yeah.
I'll play around.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate, and these
Kate.
are my two Blender abstract files. This one is about the abstract concept of order. I had a lot of fun just messing around with copying and pasting. I know that in class, the professor said that there would be some issues copying and pasting when you look at it through, the different views. For some reason, I didn't have that much of an issue with it. It just seemed to grab all the objects behind it, so that made it kind of fun.
So wait, did you make this by copying and pasting or with the array modifier?
No, with copy and pasting.
You copied and pasted all these cubes?
Yeah, at some point they just got too big and I was having fun and then Blender started slowing down. I was like, okay, maybe not a whole box of more cubes.
Okay. So, you have demonstrated control paste proficiency, A+. However, if the creative process is messy and nonlinear in all instances, but in this case, right, and it matters now that we're doing computer graphics, where this is when a light bulb, there should be something that goes off where you're like, I'm going to make this massive thing. Efficiency matters, right? And so in this particular instance, you should use instances, right? So over here under, with this one, I can go into here. So realize instances. I wish this was actually inverted. We're going to turn that off so that's more efficient, so that they are instances, right? Realize instances means taking the instances and making them actual data, which is slower, right? So this is the fast version. And so there, yeah, we'll go with circle. Let's go in a bunch. There. And then a second array modifier. Let's see. Can I crash my computer? There we go. So we'll do this, and then this, and then a third array modifier. There we go. And that one is, again, turning off instances, or turning on instances by turning that off. 0 here, and then there we go. And then there we go. There we go. And so now, even with that in instances, right, that gives me this, right? So, I mean, I'm just going to guess I did that faster than it took you to put those together. Okay, that's fine. Like you know, first week you did a really interesting thing of notable magnitude, but you know, this giant cube of cubes, right? Unless you want to place them by hand for extra computational reasons, then using the computer here to do this would definitely be the more efficient way to go about it, right? Because like, yeah, I can see it in the screen there. It's chugging a little bit, right? In terms of, yeah. And at some point there, if you duplicated that array of cubes again and again and again, you will get to a point where it's just like, ugh, this is really kind of unusable at that point, right? But yeah, good job on the copy and paste.
Blender did slow down, and I accidentally had boxes inside of boxes because I didn't watch out what I was.
Isaac says, quote, "Dog, D-A-W-G, how beastly is your PC?" Unquote. You did the school one? All right, wow. Yeah, we're lucky you didn't set the school one on fire. That's good.
Copying and pasting. But overall, it worked fine. I actually had a lot more fun with this one. And for the concept of chaos, here it is. I had a lot of fun just messing around with what was it, the randomized settings. I kept making like donuts and like just making the shapes go inside of each other. But yeah, I had a fun time experimenting with the directions, the rotations. What I found hard in this is that I actually tried to do, what was it? Modify one of the shapes on a curve. Once again, the curves have come to haunt me. But I ended up figuring it out. I needed to tie the cones to the curve. And yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. I also just struggled with how to render it. But yeah, I ended up figuring it out. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're going to talk more about rendering today. That's why, specifically I asked you guys just to turn in blend files for this assignment, because we didn't really get a chance to talk about that on Wednesday. We talked a little bit about it before. And last but not least here.
My name is Easy Nebula, and the tools, and this is my scenes for my introduction to Blender. Even though I did use Blender before, I decided to just use something simple, nothing too crazy. Basically, it's basically like two like disagreeing sides, like just going out. The cones are unhappy with the cubes because they think they're better than the cubes, and vice versa. And this is for like my order, like everything to be like all in its place, like all lined up and all nice and neat. And then I'll get to the chaos in a bit. Now here is the chaos. As you can see, very chaotic and all crazy and all out of place. All out of place, everything all over the place, stuff like that. The cones, I decided to make them like go up and down, and these ones go side to side in the crazy spectrum, you could say. With these ones, they go like up and down, angled, all rotated in weird ways. Same with these these cubes. They're like in different arcs all around, spread out. If they're going crazy, that who's gonna win? No, I'm gonna win. And the tools that I enjoyed was the arrays, because it feels really simple to like be able to make a bunch of the same object in one place. It feels really easy. Like it makes the work much more manageable, and also that you can like make one tiny change on this cone, but it goes all crazy over here. And for example, like this cone right here, like on the top right here.
So yeah, again, excellent observation, Adrian. And this is the trade-off, right? That the procedural power allows us to, do all of this procedurally, but we kind of give up that precise control over each individual element there. There's ways to go back and change some of that, but you're always sort of sacrificing things a little bit one way or the other there. But those are good. You understand, like, definitely abstract, and you got everything happening there. So good. All right, and then Brandon actually put his up on YouTube. So here we go. Let's have Brandon's. He said he put the subtitles or the captions in. And so am I blocking them? No. So first there was an odd abstract, but in order. Great. So we have our order going back and forth between perspective. I've used tools that show different views, such as in perspective and orthographic. Kudos to Brandon for getting orthographic in there. I added spheres, duplicated them, and placed them in the snap tools. Excellent. The snap tools will activate and snap to every position that is not off the coordinate numbers but is on the same axis. Yes. Yeah, and so snapping that is the by hand way of putting that cube of cubes together. I also did the cubes, the same spheres with the snap tools and duplicated. Yes. Now doing the abstract chaos. There we go. This one, I did enjoy. I added a lot of the primitives. This view is a perspective, but not an orthographic view. Okay, great. For example, this object is very far in orthographic, but not in perspective view. Oh yeah, wow, look at that. It's a really good example of how obviously objects in the distance become smaller in perspective. I used almost all of primitive objects to keep them more interesting in the scene. So this is my abstract chaos scene, and this was more fun to play with. Yeah, whether you thought chaos or order was more fun, I think probably says a lot about you as a person. Questions. What tools did you enjoy using in View? I use perspective and orthographic to view switching. What tools were challenging? It's not a challenge for me, but it's annoying to keep reminding myself to check the objects so I don't lose them in the scene with a perspective view. He doesn't have any questions. Thank you, Brandon. Great. Very nice. Okay. And then, Brandon, please just put yourself over on the other corner. That'd be a little bit easier. Okay. Awesome. Great. Okay, here we go. So with that in mind, I didn't miss anybody, right? Who has something for us to look at? Okay, great. First week, just trying to get everything in place. That's there. Now, where did we leave off on Monday? What was the last thing we talked about? We talked about...
I think it was adding materials and colors.
Materials and colors. Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Okay, great. Well, let's leave that there, but maybe make it less crazy. Okay, last week, because of our abbreviated time, I just asked you to do some things and give me the blend files, okay? Most of the weeks, I'll probably ask you to turn in both blend file and the render, okay? So at the beginning here, that's going to be usually a image file, either a PNG or a JPEG of the scene. And so when we render, we're going to take the current view of the camera and turn it into an image. This idea that we're working in 3D, but as we've discussed before, our final delivery for most of these things is going to be collapsing them into a two-dimensional image, usually with perspective, right? And so it's really important to understand this bifurcation of the work you're doing. You have the actual geometry. The other word you'll hear me use for this geometry, there we go, is topology, which is the layout of the geometry on the surface. Then, separate from that, you have the things that are going to influence what does the final image look like, right? So you have the structure, and then you have to essentially paint on top of the structure. And you do that in the render, and that's where we get a bunch of things that matter, right? The reason Max's glass didn't look like glass is because it's a holistic system that takes into account the materials, the camera, and the lighting. All those things work together in order to make the image look like whatever it is that you want it to look like. And so I'll just go over a few very basic things with these so that we know how to render images here, right? Because we didn't talk about rendering on Monday. Is that correct? Am I correct in that? I teach 3 classes in the same day, so it kind of runs together, especially at the beginning here, because we're all using Blender to some extent, and I'm doing similar review in the other classes. So if I'm talking about something we already talked about, someone just, hey, we did cover this, okay? Great. Okay, so here, the lights. Well, hold on, let's do this first. Just rendering. Well, let's get in some lights in here. 2 different kinds of lights here to start off with. So I saw that Sean used a bunch of area lights. I'm going to say that area lights are off limits for now. There's 2 lights that you care about. The sunlight and the point light, okay? The sunlight is like the light that comes from the sun. All the light arrives in the scene parallel. And so in the sunlight, the way that you manipulate it is that you rotate it. You do not moving it. Moving it does nothing to the visual presentation of it. The point light is like a light bulb, and in order to manipulate the point light, you will move the point light. Or, in Blender, the shortcut is G for grab. And so this over here, this is the sunlight, right? All the light is arriving parallel, like the sun and the earth, right? Now, I know it's not technically exactly parallel, but it's functionally parallel because the sun is so much bigger than the earth. All of the light that arrives here. So there's that. And for a point light, we have a point in space, and then the light is coming out in all directions from that point, like a light bulb. But make a note that you shouldn't scale a point light. Scaling either of them is pointless, pun intended. It'll let you do it, but it doesn't do anything. The point light is a true point, just like a vertex in 3D. It is a singular point in space. It cannot be scaled. It has no mass. It's more of a metaphor. Okay. Great. So let's look at this. So here I have a point light. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, I'll just delete this and do it from scratch. There we go. Shift A, light, point. There we go. And I hit G, and I start to move it around. You can sort of see it moving through the space here. I can see it because I am in this mode up here. Okay. If I wasn't in render preview mode, I wouldn't see it at all. And so it's not traveling very far, and it's not very bright. And so all of the I've selected a thing and I want to adjust the thing, whatever that is. In this case, a light. This green data tab is the first place you should go if you want to adjust any of the parameters for anything that you currently have selected. And so there you go. And so now the power, you can see I start to crank this up and we can see more. And so we have power and exposure. What are these two numbers? Power is the raw brightness, and then exposure is going to be a multiplier of it, right? A way to sort of, because brightness is not a linear value in our perception of it, that we have this multiplier value. So for right now, I would just dial up this one. Dialing this one up will dial it up really bright, really fast. And so you can definitely end up in a situation where you blow things out, right? Where we're losing detail here because it's so bright. So I'm going to keep that at 0. There we go. And just adjust this here. And so if I bring this up, there we go. You see that I am getting shadows because the shadows are on. And so this is what I was referring to before. In 3D, shadows are optional. In photography class, not so much, right? We can't just say no shadows on this. That's not a thing. And so here, leaving them on in most cases is the way to go. And the other thing we can do here is, tint the light. Some of you were doing this before. I would encourage you to be conservative with your light tinting so it doesn't look, it can look very cheesy very quickly there. But with this, if I'm moving it around, you see that it is a point here, and we're getting this very dramatic lighting of this cube shape here with the point light. I'm going to turn this off for a second, and now I'm going to Shift A and make this sunlight. Boom. Okay, so now it's here at the origin, right? Origin, again, have that in your notes. That's the 0, 0, 0 coordinate. And here, I am not moving it. Watch what happens if I move it. I'm going to press G. Absolutely nothing, right? It's parallel light that has flooded the entire project. And so it's at the origin there. If I press R to rotate it, look at what's happening. It's as if I'm rotating, moving the sun across the sky, right? And so rotation, you have to be careful with the sunlight. You can rotate, if you have a floor, you can totally rotate it below the horizon and your scene will be dark at that point. But if you're in render preview mode, it'll look dark. And again, we have our relative strength of this and angle there. And so I'm going to make a floor real quick. Shift A, mesh, plane, scale this up. There we go. And so now if I come back and grab the sun and press R, there we go. I've rotated it below the horizon. Everything is dark. And dawn to dusk, up and over. So, most of the time, for right now, I would say a good strategy would be, if you're going to use the sunlight, most of the time that is the only light source in the scene, because most of the time you're using this in sort of like representational image making as an outside scene, right? So I'm making a scene it's supposed to look like it's outside. Where do I start with my lighting? With the sunlight. That's where you should start, right? Because that's going to give you light throughout the entire scene. And for the point light, that's going to be usually a situation where you have more than one, but not 15, right? And so that's a good just sort of random number there. Let's say if you have more than 15 lights in the scene, that's, don't do that. It's probably not a great decision artistically or strategically. And so this is mostly going to be something that's supposed to look like it's inside, right? It has a floor, walls, some sort of room, okay? These are very general rules of thumb here, just in terms of getting going, starting with the lights. Does that make sense for everybody there? The big one is the idea that you rotate the sunlight and you move the point lights, right? The inverse is also true here in this case, right? If I turn the point light back on and bring it over here, right? So like, again, this is hit G, not a lot of light. If I were to dial this up, brighter, right? The light source close to the object, creating these, dramatic shadows everywhere. And so, depending on how big this cube was supposed to look, something like that. Maybe I need even more light here. Now it's starting to look like something that's like in a room. If I were to rotate the cube, or rotate the point light, press R, nothing, right? It's just a point. It has no directionality to it. The radius, also notable here. Watch what happens. And so if you have this normalized checked, the radius here is primarily going to have to do with the shadow quality. And so if it's the default here, I believe is 0, and we get what's referred to as hard shadows. In the real world, this is done with small light sources will give you harder shadows, okay? If I turn up the radius of the light, we start to get softer shadows over there. And we start to see some of the limitations of rendering in that in order to do the softness, that's a version of blurring or noise, and we get a little bit of grain there. But it's fine. We're just living with that for now. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of the light quality. Come back here. Same thing. Do we get that with the, I don't think we get it with the sunlight, do we? Oh, I had the other one. There we go. Yeah, so the angle here, setting on the sun, is giving you similar control of some of the softness of the shadows. And yeah, in general, if you want it to look like it's outside, on Earth, then if we're closer towards dusk, making it a little bit more orange or something, some golden hour lighting. Okay, but at the beginning here, it's usually making a decision, I'm going to use this strategy or that strategy. Am I going to use primarily a sunlight, and that'll be the main thing, or am I going to use a series of point lights to light the scene? Okay, so I have light in the scene. That's good. I'm going to save this file, save as, here. And this will be render example. Okay. Okay. And so the shortcut for rendering, F12 to render. Again, render here, make the pixels. We're going to open up a separate window when you press F12 here. For some of your computers, you may have to hold down the function button when you press F12, depending on how your keyboard is configured. So keep that in mind. Blender makes a lot of use of the function keys, which depending on how you have Windows configured may, if it doesn't work when you press F12, hold down function, which is the FN plus F12. I want this to be, I want to see this from this view. And so I'm going to go Control-Alt-0. There we go. And I can't see anything here. Was this the class where we started talking about clipping or no? We talked about clipping. Okay. Let's just make sure, because this scene ended up being pretty big here. There we go. So camera, when I pressed 0 before, I didn't see anything. And so I came in here and dialed up my clipping end to 5,000 so that I could see the scene. Okay, the other thing, when I look through the camera, it does this. This is what's going to get rendered. So if I press F12, boom, there it is. The other good shortcut key here is that when you press 0 to look through the camera, on a big keyboard, if you press home, it takes that window and just blows it up so it's filling the entire viewport, right? As opposed to just pressing 0. I mean, now it's stuck in that, and so let's move it over to this one. Control-Alt-0. There we go. And so there it gives you, it tries very clearly to show you what the frame is, okay? So just be aware of that. In the viewport, what's going to be in the render is this portion, not the entire viewport necessarily, unless you've pressed home, and then that blows it up to the entire size there. And so F12 renders it, okay? And so this is essentially, this window that shows up here when you press F12, this is essentially just a picture viewer. You're just viewing the flattened two-dimensional image that you have rendered here. When I press F12, this is happening instantaneously here, right? It happens right away. That will not always be the case. In fact, some of you made stuff that is fairly heavy for this assignment, that it may take a second for that to happen. From this point, I can go to Image, Save As, and save this as a PNG. And so this will be my first render, and just save as PNG for now. And so now if I came back and looked at that, we should see we have a PNG file, right? This is just a regular image. You could bring this into Photoshop and add other stuff to it, or color correct it, or whatever it is that you would want to do, right? It's an image at that point, okay? So we have rendered this. This is essentially the top stratospheric view of our workflow over the course of the semester. Model, light, materials, render, render, and then in here, in smaller letters, save the .blend file, right? The .blend is your working file. There'll be, unless you're working with other 3D artists who are also contributing to this, there's not going to be a lot of instances where you like submit blend files. You'll do that to me, but it's not, people not doing this kind of work are not interested in that. Most of the time, if you're doing client work, the thing that you're delivering to the client is this, right? Which for right now is going to be a still image, .png, or you could compress it to a .jpeg, or next week we'll make a MP4 file of something, of a series of images in actual animation there, right? And so these are what I commonly refer to, as you see in the sections of the assignments, as deliverables, right? These are the the media that you're actually posting to YouTube or posting to Instagram or printing out on paper at the end of the day. Those are the actual deliverable formats, right? Whereas this one, you're saving so that you can go back and edit and make changes later. Is this clear to everybody, what we're doing here? Okay. Good, right? Because this week, last week I said, just give me the blend files because we didn't talk about this. Some of you already knew how to render, great. But now, this week and every week going forward, it'll be show me the renders, turning that in, and then sometimes I'll say also turn in the blend files in case we need to get in there and look at what happened or whatever has happened in this instance.
So in the videos moving forward, do you just, like the ones that we present when we work on, do you just want us to show the render?
No, I mean, I'll have you turn in the render. In your presentation videos, I think as long as your computer is handling it, it's more useful to do those in Blender because most of the time your work and your questions have to do with the interface and everything. And if you have that up, you can show us exactly what's happening, right? Because as I've already done, being able to see what you see on the computer screen, that's really valuable to make this work, right? Versus you telling me that like, well, I did this in Blender and it didn't work. It's hard to tell, like if I can see your screen, I can be like, oh, you were in the wrong mode or whatever, So using Blender in the presentation video is probably the best way to go forward. Okay. Great. Okay, so we're able to render images there. We pull them up and we can say save on those images. Let's look at the render settings for just a moment here. So, yeah, here is the aforementioned render engine, right? So that's what this is. This is also different than working in Photoshop. There's this separation, like I mentioned before, between the geometry and then the rendering of that geometry. In Blender, there's two separate render engines here. One is EV, and this is, there's a lot to say here. Faster, real time, not capable of super quality, but looks really, really good. The other one is called Cycles, and this is slower. And by slower, I mean it could be incredibly slow if it's unconfigured. And this is what's referred to as offline, meaning it's not trying to show it to you in real time. And this is capable of doing, very, very high fidelity stuff. But not, for right now, we're going to be able to get plenty of fidelity out of this because, again, it's not that like we switch it and this one's just a little bit more time. It can be so much time that it's unusable, right? Like you'll press render and then you'll be like, is my computer working? Right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll have this render done in 60 minutes, which is usually way too long for everybody in this context, okay? So keep it on EV. Next one down here under output. This is the resolution of the image that we are rendering, right? So by default, it should be 1920 by 1080, which is a high definition frame. 100% means that you're going to render 100% of those pixels. It'll actually be that entire resolution. And the aspect ratio here, we want to keep that at 1 by 1. These are the default values, and they should, if they're not there, you should set them to that. Sean wanted to make a portrait image rather than a landscape image, right? So just to be clear, landscape, portrait, right? And so this one here, typical landscape image is going to be a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. We'll get into this some more, but the aspect ratio here means that the actual resolution, the aspect ratio is essentially the reduced fraction of the actual resolution, right? So you can take 1920 and divide it by 1080, and if you boil that all down, you get 16 by 9, which is the aspect ratio of most television screens. Over here, there's some variety here, but social media, Instagram, Reel, aspect ratio, there's some variation here, but in general, this is kind of inverted. If we take the TV screen and we just rotate it, it's usually close to 9 by 16. So how would we do that if you wanted to make an Instagram reel of these cubes from here? We would come in and just simply change the aspect ratio here, or change the resolution. And so I changed the top number to 1080, and I changed the bottom number to 1920. And so now, when I press 0 here, we look through the camera, and the camera framing has changed. Everybody see that there? This is now the actual framing, because obviously you need to change the framing here, perhaps slightly. Control Alt 0, there we go. So that it's lined up with whatever you would want there. And now if I press F12, boom. If I were to expand this, you see that the image that was made is in the portrait aspect ratio. Image, save, and this is my first render. Portrait, and save. Let's go back to the other one for now. Okay, any questions about rendering for right now? Okay, it's important to realize for right now, it seems kind of visually indistinguishable from saving, right? You're used to like doing a bunch of work and then saving your file. And when you save a file in most programs, it's like, it's not a commitment, right? You just press Control S and you saved it, good job. And for right now, we just render, we just press F12 and it renders it and it's great. In the future, this is going to become a major part of your thinking for this class. That if you do make certain decisions, it's going to be longer to render than in other decisions. So for right now, an easy thing, later on, more difficult. Or at least it's going to take longer, so you need to think about what's happening here. Okay, great. Okay, let's go back. We made some colors on the materials, right? Okay, so let's look at one other thing here. I'm going to Shift A and make a icosphere. There we go. Let's scale this up. And I'm going to turn this off for a second. There we go. And let's look at this. Okay. Faceting is when we can see the faces, right? Remember our atomic elements of geometry in Blender: vertices or points, edges, and faces. And so one of the ways we make things smoother is by adding faces, but there's this issue of the shading. We can have smooth shading, which will essentially allow us to not see the individual faces. The computer is going to do some interpolation in between each edge. So this is what you'll see people do often in many tutorials. They say, like, go ahead and shade smooth. And this will take something that even has lower-ish amounts of topology and make it appear smooth. So most of the time, we don't want to have this, okay? The faceting is, unless you're doing a specific stylized, low poly kind of look, we want to make the surfaces look smooth and not make them appear faceted. So for instance, when I make the icosphere here, we can clearly see the geometry of the object. If I come over here to wireframe view, there it is, and still obvious here. If I select this and I right click, right, so I selected the object, I'm in object mode, I right click and I say shade smooth, boom. Now you'll see that the surface of the object, this is smooth shading. The computer is, the rendering system is doing some work to interpolate in between each edge, okay? But what about the outside silhouette of the object? Does that look smooth? No, okay? So this is really, really important to understand. How would we actually smooth the actual shape? If you understand one underlying principle, this makes sense. It's that a single face cannot be curved. And that's why these out here are the way they are. If I make another icosphere, Shift A, Mesh, icosphere, and then on this one, I turn up the subdivisions, right? So I'll turn it up to, I don't know, 5. It's in the same place as the other one, so let me move it. And scale it up. There they are next to each other. Okay, so this one has many subdivisions, this one has few subdivisions. This one, it looks, at first glance, you're like, oh yeah, that's smooth shaded. But is it? It's not. You can see that there's still individual faceting happening there. But if I right click and shade smooth this one, now not only is it smooth across the surface, but the silhouette is also smooth, right? And so this is where we are at. More subdivisions typically equals a smoother surface. Okay, if that's the case, the next logical thing that you would say to me is like, well, Casey, why don't we just subdivide the crap out of everything so that it looks good? Why do we not do that? Because more subdivision equals more faces equals more compute for the more computation that needs to happen not only while you're working on it, but also at render time. Now, it's important, I point this out so that people realize it's important to, now that we're modeling things, to some extent, it's important to model them efficiently, right? Here at the beginning, don't get crazy here, right? It's important to be knowledgeable of this, but certainly for the first couple months here, you're probably not going to end up in a situation where the bottleneck, right? What is the thing that's slowing down my computer is going to be that you just over subdivided, right? This comes into play a lot more, like, because there's other things, right? Notably switching from EV to cycles, that can be a much, 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 much more significant bottleneck than simply having more polygons. The computers are really fast now. They can compute millions, hundreds of millions of faces per second under certain circumstances. And so this, while it's important to be aware of this as professional 3D modelers, at the beginning here, this is not going to be something that you need to be obsessing over at this point, okay? The good news is the computers are fast enough to give us a lot of leeway here with this one. So the other important thing that I just did is, some of you probably noticed this before, is if I make a new primitive, right? I come over here and I say new, let's do icosphere. There we go. And I'll zoom in on that. Down here in this menu, these are the primitive settings. Once you make a new primitive, as soon as you click on something else, these go away. This is a destructive decision you're making here. And so there's ways around this. There's issues here, but just to be aware that this stuff is happening. Some of you may not have even noticed this over here, but this is where we can make decisions about the fundamental subdivisions in the different shapes that we're using, right? You can see now, as I'm dialing up and down the subdivisions in the icosphere, how that changes the apparent smoothness of the surface. And the only other thing here is the radius in this one. If I were to make a cube, I have the size. I don't have subdivisions for the cube. You would add subdivisions in a different way. If I make a cylinder, there we go. My point here is that the parameters change depending on the primitive shape. The cylinder has a radius. The cube does not have a radius, right? And the vertices around the cylinder. Also, if you drastically decrease this, this is where you could get, like wedge shapes, because that's not a separate primitive by default. And then you have the radius and the depth of it, the radius and the depth. So clicking on this tiny caret down here, this is usually folded up like this, allows you to make those changes down there. Okay, so if you're going to make some sort of very, very simple tree here, I'm going to bring this down. Another good rule of thumb here is that if there is radius subdivision setting, meaning that you get to choose how many subdivisions go around in any sort of circular or radial pattern, use an even number. This allows you to later divide the object in half, usually divide the object in quarters, right? If you use an odd number, unless you're just doing something very specific, like I'm going to make a 5-legged starfish or something like that, having an even number is usually better down the road when you're making those sort of decisions. So here, I can switch back and say that this is 16. There we go. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and GZ, move this up a little bit. And then let's make a cone for the top of it. So I'll go ahead and make a cone. And again, let's go ahead and put that at 16. And there we go. And GZ, move this up. There we go. S scale. There we go. And GZ, move this down. And if we wanted some more of them, Shift D, Z. Let's construct it so it's accurate. And scale that down maybe. And then Shift D, S. There we go. Okay, and so I've got some sort of tree arrangement here. How could I turn this into something I could use? We're going to use a bunch of our tools. Okay, so first of all, we want this to be shade smooth. So I'm going to right click and say shade smooth on these. There we go. And on the trunk. There we go. For our simple tree, evergreen tree. Okay, how would we put these together? We want this to be one thing. Right now it's cylinder and 3 cones, right? And so in this case, it's going to be something that we're going to want to reuse. And so we're going to, our options, just to review, are join and what else? Parent and what was the other one? Join, parent, and collection. Collection is out, right? Collection is just organizing, right? So here we're going to join these so that they're one thing over here. So I'm going to select these here, 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 here. Make sure I don't have the plane. In fact, we'll just get rid of the plane for now. There we go. And I'll get rid of this thing that I was using. Delete that. Click, 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 click. There we go. And Control J. And so that combines them into one thing up here, like so, cone. And this cone will be renamed to, you got it, tree. There we go. And so now I've got tree. Great. That's step 1. We have made a tree. If I'm going to look at it in the wireframe view, making sure that the wireframe view, there we go. Now I can see, again, setting that to random color over there. And this is a good, I just told you, more subdivisions equals smoother surface, but don't go crazy. How do you know you're going crazy? When you go over to wireframe view, especially if you don't have it in, if you have it like this, it's black, right? And so if you go over to wireframe view and the surface looks black because all of the edges, there's that many edges and they're all jammed right next to each other, that's probably too many subdivisions, okay? For right now, as a rule of thumb. Okay, again, these are very general things. I'm just trying to address stuff that I see people do a lot at the beginning. Come back here. Okay, back to here. There we go. Great, we have the tree. What is the next thing we need to do? We made this object out of other objects. We made a composite object, right? Last week we just took the raw primitives and did stuff with them. Some of you did make composite objects. That's what we're doing right now. Next thing we need to do, let's just come up with our, place objects, manage topology. That was our subdivisions. And then we select all and Control J to join them together. Next in our list here, we need to manage the origin, right? As soon as you make a composite object, you want to make sure that the anchor point for said object is in a place that makes sense. And for most things that are going to sit on the floor or be on the ground, the center bottom is what we're doing in a lot of cases here. And that's what we want to do with our tree. We want to put the anchor point, sort of in the middle of the bottom of the trunk. So we did that on Monday. Let's come over here and do it again. I'm going to select the tree. I'm going to press N and come over here to Tool and go to Origins. And so that's where the origin is now. I'm going to say GZ and move the origin down to the bottom. I'm going to zoom around to make sure it's actually in the center, or I could just come up here to the top. If it was off in some strange area over there, I could move it back to the middle. If I want to be super, super precise, I could turn on the snapping to make sure that from each angle, I am accurately placing the origin of the object. And then I want to make sure I come out of origin placement. Cool.
I gotta ask about this. This one I have a problem with. So the origin is the very thin, perpendicular wire looking, but the cursor, I don't really understand the relationship between the two, because if I want to bring in a new primitive, it lands wherever the cursor is, and then I can't find it. It's somewhere not even in the viewport.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't land at the origin. It doesn't land at 0, 0, 0. Why would that be?
Yeah, you moved your cursor. I never move my cursor. What is the shortcut for anyone? Mark, do you know what's the shortcut for moving the cursor back to the center? Yeah.
Right click, I think. No, I think it's just like middle click or something. Or left click.
On the left panel, I just click the cursor, but it's
Like if the cursor gets in a different zone, how do we put it back?
on the left panel.
I don't know that shortcut. Hold on. Move shortcut.
Remember, it used to be a big problem in earlier versions of Blender.
Where you just origin the cursor if you want selected.
No, I want cursor to origin.
Yeah, you can't like Alt G if you're selected on cursor.
If you want to move that, there's the button up at the top left side.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. And so now, there we go. And so if I move it around and then I Alt G, no, that doesn't work.
So in the top menu,
So
it
yeah,
says
I mean, the short answer is move the cursor back to the middle so that then it goes there. Yeah.
I mean, I
Well,
can do it manually, but I just want it to stay there, and that's it. I never want
Yeah, so I mean, again, I'm just not a cursor user because it just, just doesn't. I don't like it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm never using this tool. Like, don't click on that.
Clear what it's for. It's not, I mean, it's not the mouse.
No, there's lots of people who use it. I just don't use it, and I don't teach it, and I just find it like an additional level of
So when
interference.
you are clicking on that just to return it to 0, 0, 0 and never touch it again, at the top menu bar where it says object, if you click and then it says set origin, gives you all these options. That may be where a problem, because it's wherever it is seems to be where my primitive lands. And it's never, how, I guess, I'm gonna call it C4D hangover.
Mhm.
Where you could just go Alt 0 and everything would return to the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Level of the universe.
Yeah, Alt G is going to do that
Alt
here.
G.
Yeah, Alt G is zero out the transform. Okay, we got our tree. The tree's got an anchor point that we want now. Good. Okay, so let's, if we wanted multiple trees, because now it's a single object, it makes it very easy to, make more trees this way, right? And so if we wanted a Christmas tree farm with a little bit of variation, not in the, maybe in that way and in that way, not in this way, right? Because that's weird. So that gives us a little bit of variation there in our Christmas tree farm. And then in terms of scale, right, you can make some of them bigger, some of them smaller. And then in addition, it could be, we could have more of those there if we wanted to, again. Right, and we've got more Christmas trees on our Christmas tree farm. That's one way to go about it. In addition to that, let's go ahead and make one other thing. I'm gonna Shift A, make a new plane. Okay, so we're going to scale this up. So I'm gonna press S. And for right now, let's look at a few things. We've got this plane here. Let's do just a little bit of manipulating this plane. Everybody put this in big letters in your notes. Blender expects scale, which again is relative, to be 1, 1, 1. If you have 1, 1, 1 scale, you're going to avoid many, many, many problems, okay? How do we make sure that that is the case? We apply scale. This is the command, which is going to be Control Control A, and then select scale. Not a coffee. There's just a little bit left. Okay. I'm going to do this to this plane. Here we go. The plane, I just made it and pressed S and scaled it up. And so if I look at the numbers here, this is what should set off alarm bells in your mind in the future, right? You've got not 1, 1, 1 relative scale. This, while it doesn't look like it's presenting a bunch of issues here right now, if I want to do anything to this plane, there'll be a bunch of problems in the future. So here, I will Control A and say scale. Now, notice that the plane looks visually indistinguishable. Nothing has changed, right? But look at the number. All we've done is we've told Blender that the size it is now, this is now the size of the plane, okay? As I want the size of this object to be understood by Blender as the natural size of the object. This will seem cryptic at first. It'll make more sense as we go on, okay? If nothing else, just take my word for it. And if you scale anything strangely, right? Like let's say I want to make a, someone's living in an igloo at this Christmas tree farm, and I'm going to use an icososphere. There we go. And I'm going to scale it up like this. Actually, I'm going to use this one. There we go. And I'm going to grab this and scale it up. And then maybe use my tools and smush it so it's a little bit kind of like this. Okay. That's what I want. I believe Alejandro used some shapes like this in your angel where you smushed it a little bit like this. Now, this, if you were to do nothing else with it, I suppose it would be fine. But almost always, you're going to need to apply some modifiers or do something to it, and all of the modifiers will not function correctly unless we have applied the scale on this object. And so I can, again, Control A, scale, watch the scale numbers, back to 1, okay? Now things will function correctly. We could shade smooth this, all of that sort of business over there. Actually, probably wanted that less subdivisions, but we get the idea. So now the idea of subdivisions and smoothness. Let's come back to this plane and let's do some atomic work on this plane using just our regular tools. So we'll go tab into edit mode. There we go. How many vertices does this plane have? Mark? 4. Yeah, backpack, mark, both correct. 4. Right, by default, just 4. A single face, or in this case plane, cannot be bent. And so if I grab just one vertex here and start moving it around, you can see what's happening, right? See how this, you would expect there to be like a crease here, right? There is not, because there is no edge here, okay? I'll explain this more, but we're running out of time. So in order to do something to this plane, right, because we want to make our farm not perfectly flat, I'm going to go to face mode, select it, and then right click and subdivide. There we go. And so subdivision, when you run the command to subdivide one time, you go from 1, and we cut it this way and we cut it that way, to 4. Okay, this is important. Every time you run the subdivision command, you multiply the number of faces by 4. So we'll run it again. Right click, subdivide, right click, subdivide. There we go. Now I can grab vertices and sort of just move them in order to create something that's not perfectly flat. A little bit like this. There's other ways to do this. If you know how to use the sculpt tools, by all means. But we're just doing something like that just to make it not, a flat piece of ground. And then if we shade smooth this, it looks smoother, right? The shadowing is where it sort of falls apart. Everybody see what's happening there? And so we'll learn about one other modifier here. And we need to subdivide with a modifier. And we'll do that with the appropriately named subdivision surface modifier. And so if I put that on the plane, now it looks smoother. Something else we could do here is we're going to come back to our tree. And we will, let's turn this one off. And yeah, we have the new one, scatter on surface. And so, actually, sorry, this needs to go on the plane. And so here, after the subdivision, we will grab scatter on surface. And this is a modifier which sort of links two objects. You can scatter something on something else. And so here, we could go ahead and select the tree. There we go. And now we can turn down the density of this quite a bit. And we have some trees here. My light, the hardness of the light is, I'm going to turn this down. There we go. And so now we can see the clear. Now, if you do this and your trees are not sitting on your surface, is probably, the main thing is probably the anchor point of your trees is not correct. But I'm able to do this, and now I can, what I was telling you about before, rotate the sun across the sky. Now that's much more, artistically interesting once I have something that looks like, a forest. So the scatter on surface thing, again, that's on the plane. So you put it on the surface that you want to scatter on here. By default, it's under density. You could also change it to amount, so that if your client says we need exactly 43 trees, you can be like, there you go. That's exactly 43 trees scattered all over the surface here. And then the placement of them by default is random. And I'll speak about this at length later. The computer is not capable of true randomness. It is a deterministic machine. And so changing the seed gives you a new version of randomness. You essentially step into a different multiverse over here by changing the seed of this. Yes?
If you hide the original tree, will it get rid of the others?
No. So.
I was mostly wondering because it was the one tree that was just.
Yes, it was bothering me as well. Yes. So yes, in this instance, when we're instance pun intended, because that's actually what these are. These are instances. Yeah. Realize instances is off, so it means they are instances, right? If you don't understand this yet, the one thing you need to memorize, instance equals fast copy, okay? You could have probably millions of instances very, very efficiently. If they are not, if they're duplicates, less, because of the way they're computed. And so, yeah, I'm able to turn off the original thing so that then I'm just dealing with the instanced copies of the thing in order to make my scene here. So we made a composite object of some kind. We joined the object. We managed the anchor point. We made sure that the, let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. In the original object, I'm going to select it and Control A and make sure that I apply scale there. You see that that affected the way this worked, and so I can come back and adjust now. So that was the one thing I missed there that I would take care of, is applying scale. This is going to be the thing I'll make you show me on your video. Look at the objects, and I want you to check and make sure that you have applied scale on the objects, right? Because now on the plane, on this, here, we can adjust the transforms of the scatters instances, and so we can scale them here. Is this if they're going to be linked? No. Is there a link button on this one? We'll make them 0.5, 0.5, point tab. There we go. There we go. Randomize. There we go. Now I've got small trees and big trees, right? Because I clicked on randomize. This is very similar to the array modifier, right? Except it's just putting them randomly on the surface. So again, here, there's ways to control this, but this is another example of that trade-off, right? Where this instantaneous forest, if you're in a situation where you just need forest and you don't need total control over every tree in the forest, this is obviously the way to go, right? If we need to control each and every tree, we would need to adjust some things here. But we're kind of out of time, and we'll leave it at that for now. So I sort of combined a lot of the stuff that we had talked about previously in order to make that happen, right? We did some atomic level modeling in terms of moving those points around on the plane. And then we used the subdivision surface, right? So this is, again, we used a modifier, and you guys were like, hey, that modifier is cool. Welcome to the world of modifiers. Now we're in the world of modifier stacks, right? Where you've got multiple modifiers that are going to be computing things in layers. And here, order matters. Okay, keep that in mind. If you change the order of the modifiers, that will change the result in almost all instances. Yes?
Are the modifiers like layers? Like what happens if you put the scatter one above subdivision?
In this case, I don't think we'll see much of a difference.
It's just like some modifiers.
Yeah, it just really depends on what they're doing. I mean, here, let's see if we can see the difference from the top. Yeah, okay, so subdivision first, scatter second. And so if we look at the bottom, see how the trunks are aligned perfectly with the smooth surface? And so now if we reverse this, where we scatter and then we smooth it, it's the scatter placement is happening based on the position of the unsmoothed surface. And so we get some trees that are floating and some trees that are too far into the ground. And so that's what happens in this case. In terms of like what will go wrong if I mess up the order of the modifiers, it depends on what the modifiers are and what they're doing. Anything from very little to total chaos and destruction. So, somewhere in between those two things. Yes. Do you have a question, Mark? Okay, all right.
I don't really understand why in this case scatter on top would make a difference in their connection to the surface. Why is scatter randomized?
Yeah, it's because the subdivision is the one that matters here, right? The subdivision is making more subdivisions, which is smoothing the surface. The profile of the surface is different when the subdivision is off or on. See that? Right? So here, if we put the scatter first, the scatter is happening on this surface, and then it gets smoothed. Okay, so that's why that's happening. Yes, Brianna?
I wanted to ask, since some trees go like into the igloo, how would you like?
Yeah, it's a longer thing. We'll talk about it next week. So yeah, we'll just make some trees and put them on here for now. But yeah, that's because that's good intuition here. Like obviously, this is really powerful. How do I use this really powerful tool, but also make it art directable? We have to talk about a few other things in order to discuss that. So we will get to that. Thank you for leading us to that. Okay. Just have them not be in the igloo. Yeah. And the answer is long. Not terribly long, but okay, great. Everybody good? All right, so I'll get the assignment posted as soon as I can. And yeah, everybody's good? Okay, awesome. And sorry, I didn't have the chat up. Fabio is available Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those of you who haven't had a chance to meet Fabio yet, just, check in with him. He's available Tuesdays, Thursdays, and by appointment. He's great, and he wants to help. Great. Okay. I think everything else there is on point. Okay, great. I will see everybody on Monday. We'll finally have a second complete week.